So my number one is Halloween from 1978. This is directed by John Carpenter, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance. IMDb plot summary: 15 years after murdering his sister on Halloween night 1963, Mike Myers escapes from a mental hospital and returns to the small town of Haddonfield, Illinois to kill again. So, like I talked about in the beginning of this episode, like for me, one of the big moments of fall, even to this day, even though fall is not much of a season in LA, is Halloween. It was one of my favorite holidays, if not my favorite holiday growing up as a kid. I loved the whole, the costumes, the trick or treating, the candy, that whole thing. But one thing I would do a lot growing up, and especially now, is around the time of October leading into Halloween, it would be horror movies is what I'd spend the majority of my time watching. Was love that genre as a kid. Obviously as a kid, I was watching more things like, the Disney version of Sleepy Hollow, and nothing like this, which I didn't see until I was in college. Actually, it was the first time I saw Halloween. But in my mind, not only does the movie take place on Halloween Day, which is a holiday I associate with the fall, and is a horror movie, but is my favorite horror movie. And I think arguably one of the best, if not the best horror movie that's been made. I think again the film takes place over Halloween, so you see a lot of the regalia, the pumpkins, and actually the opening shot of the movie was during the credit sequence as a jack-o'-lantern, right? Mm-hmm. There's a pumpkin carving scene, so you have all that. The film takes place in Illinois, though is shot in LA, so the streets don't necessarily look fall, but in terms of the aesthetics at all, it definitely looks like Pasadena where they filmed it, but. What John Carpenter is able to do, I think, is really capture though the stillness and the quiet of like a dark fall night, where it is like, okay, it's kind of creepy, it's kind of still, even though again Halloween night there'd be kids run around, so not necessarily the most realistic depiction of trick-or-treating, but I think a fall night, when I watch this film and what he's able to do during the night sequences in this film, it really does feel like it is a cold Illinois night instead of a warm Pasadena one. And this movie though, really is still incredibly scary to me. I think, I watch it every year actually on Halloween or close to it. It's like a ritual for me to do. And I'm still scared by it. There's still sequences, especially when Mike Myers is chasing Laurie, who's Jennifer Lee Curtis, towards the end of the film. Some great shots. One especially that still creeps me out every time I see it. She's sort of like crouched in the corner and next to a closet that's all dark, and then gradually, kind of like Mike Myers' white mask is revealed there. There's a little bit of a sting on the soundtrack that gets me every time, even though I've seen it hundreds of times. Just the way that John Carpenter is able to set that up with that shot, and also I do want to give a shout out to the DP on this film, which is Carpenter's DP he's had for a long time. Dean Cundey, who then went on to work with Spielberg and Zemeckis on some huge movies, Jurassic Park, Roger Rabbit. Like they kind of stole him because he was so good. But man, the stuff he does with the gliding camera in this movie, gliding the camera around, it really makes it feel like you are watching. It's like a point of view. I mean, honestly,
Totally.
the first sequence in this film is incredible. Point of view shot of young Mike Myers. Camera goes upstairs and he murders his sister. But it's super creepy. But throughout the whole movie, because they have this like gliding camera, like I don't know if it's a steady camera, what it actually was, but you feel like and not a lot of editing then, where the camera's moving around and you feel like you're there with them, where your eyes are moving around in different things, as opposed to, the cuts that happen in most movies. It makes you feel like you're there, which is even scarier. Like you're there in the room, Mike Myers could be there. And obviously this film's been talked to death. I mean, in terms of what it meant for the horror genre and film, and one of the more successful independent films of all time, all these things jump-started Carpenter's career, who's one of my favorite directors. So, we don't need to get into all that. I mean, we could talk about it for hours, but I had to put a horror film on here. I mean, the fall to me is definitely the spookiest time of the year. So Halloween, the original, not any of the remakes, which I don't really have much of a liking for.
I was going to ask you about the remakes and the sequels or whatever. Well, you have two horror movies, actually. Sleepy Hollow is also a horror.
Yeah, it's a horror comedy. Yeah, it is
horror
a little
comedy.
bit. Yeah, it is a little bit. This one definitely is more of the straight up horror.
It's straight up horror.
I don't think there's really much comedy in it. But yeah, so that's, even though 1.5 horror movies, I mean, you see kind of what for me the fall, that was like the highlight of the fall for me as a kid, and even now like the Halloween. I miss going to Halloween parties. something I don't get to do anymore because of the pandemic and stuff. But it's always
Right.
fun to get into a costume and bob for apples.
Yeah, I had watched this movie once before with a bunch of people, actually not too long ago from today.
Oh,
Maybe
really?
like I want to say like 3, 4 years ago,
Oh,
perhaps.
okay.
Because horror is just not
Right.
my thing. It's
Mhm.
not that maybe I should take a minute to explain why it's not my thing, which is that it's not that I'm scared. I mean, I will be scared for sure. I'm only human,
Right,
but
right, right.
it's not that so much. I mean, my mom still tells me the story, or my aunt actually, that as a kid, there was this like horror TV show that used to come on TV like Friday nights or something late night.
Mhm.
And if my parents were out at a party or somewhere, and if my aunt was kind of watching us over, I would insist to put that thing on.
Oh.
And if like another kid of my age came over, who would usually be like, crouching in the corner with their eyes covered, I would be the one like taking care of them because it
Oh,
just
yeah. It didn't
never,
scare you. Yeah.
not really. Because I
Yeah.
always sort of was like, this is not real. Like, even at a
Mhm.
young age, I could sort of say that. And I think that is the thing. Like,
Hmm.
because I know it's not real, I'm sort of like, what is the point? I know a lot of people listening to this are like rolling their eyes and everything, really. So there's a little bit of that, but then also, I totally get it. Like, that's why we do this podcast, because film is, to us, like the most encompassing depiction of all emotions,
Right.
right? Of all kinds. And scare is just not an emotion that I sort of give a lot of, value to, which is not to say that you couldn't use horror to, tell something groundbreaking,
Mhm.
interesting. I fully value that for sure. And that's why like this movie, even though it's just so scary, and the watch that I had for the podcast, like I couldn't watch all of it because I cannot, and I
Too
do
much.
not want to put myself in
Yeah.
that position. But you can't help but not marvel at what this person and this team created with very little. It's so effective, so affecting that it probably, when I think of horror movies, this is the movie I think of. I haven't seen that many in my life, but
Mhm.
I'm glad that I watched this, because this work has to be celebrated the way it has been, and it'll always be celebrated in my mind. And you didn't even mention Jamie Lee Curtis, who is,
Oh, so good. Yeah.
iconic and is still, building, running a career on this part, because it's just so incredible and so iconic. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love all of that, but man, it's scary. I don't want to. And I guess the other thing I would say is that since I didn't grow up with Halloween or any of that, like,
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. Yeah, was that even a known thing?
no, not at all.
Oh, okay.
Now it is, which is laughable to me, because I'm like, oh, you're walking around in costumes in like the heat. Why? This is
Yeah.
ridiculous. It's like a commercial holiday, basically.
Hmm, hmm.
I mean, it's fine. People want to have fun. It's okay. I
It's
should
been
not.
it's been commercialized, so they take all the no one even talks about Satan anymore. It's ridiculous. It's his night, and now it's all about just candy
Oh
and costumes. Like,
no.
come on, where are the pentagrams? Where's the
Oh
candles?
no.
Where's the human sacrifice? It's just like this holiday just ruined now, you know?
Oh no, 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 no. You know what I mean.
I know,
Yeah.
no, I'm just
Yeah.
joking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, totally. But
But
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, but yeah, I didn't grow up with it. So, but moving here and living here now for so long, like I see the point. Like I see the fun in it, it's obviously very funny, but I'm also not a big costume person in
Ah,
general.
okay.
So there's also that kind of playing into it. It feels like a lot of effort. And also, I don't know, there is a bit of a kind of a scare that I feel genuinely on Halloween night. And it's not even because of the movies, but it's because that people are, it's almost like people have a free pass to
Mm,
be somebody else and do
mm,
whatever. And that sort of, the fact that I'm not in control or society is not in control, there's something thrilling about that, but there's
mm,
also something very scary about that to me.
well,
Like on Halloween night, if I hear like a loud, drunk person screaming, whatever, there's definitely a feeling of dread that creeps up in my head, that what if this person is just like unhinged and start running like a crazy person. I don't know how much of this is like movie iconography speaking, but I feel like this about like drunk, out of control people in general. Like I think I've said this before on the podcast, that I don't find drunk people at bars funny for the most part, because I sort of can feel there's something, you know, lurking that could be a little bit dangerous. So this holiday is all about that. But I get the point. I get that's the point. Like, you know, being somebody else for one night, you get to be that and have fun with it. So I totally get it. It's not my thing, really.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, it's you just described I haven't seen the films, but there's the Purge horror franchise that's basically about that, right? Not Halloween, but you know, people getting one night to kind of do whatever they want, and what that means on society. I've heard the franchise is actually pretty interesting from what I've read, which you know, I think in terms of the horror genre, I mean, for me, this movie does scare me, though few horror films do, but I'm not necessarily in it always for the scares. I like the genre because it can usually say a lot of things that you can't really say effectively in other genres. I think horror and sci-fi are two of my favorite genres because I think they're the most malleable in terms of the different types of commentary you can make on society and get away with it, versus if you're trying to do it as a drama, either be too on the nose so it wouldn't work, or maybe too scandalous so you can't really talk about it. So that's to me what horror, that's why it's one of the genres that I tend to like because of what it says. And usually horror movies always has something to say. Not that I actually don't really know what this movie is trying to say, but other than it just being really scary. So maybe this wasn't the best example of a horror movie that's kind of saying something, and maybe I'll have to reflect a little bit on what Carpenter was trying to do with the film. But I just think, it's like you were saying, the craft of this is just off the charts from everyone involved. The score I have to shout out to Carpenter did. I mean, you play those notes. I mean, everyone knows what that is. But
even I know.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Even you know. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.